There is a moment in the morning that many people over 60 barely notice. You wake up, reach for your phone, check the time, perhaps glance at the news, and then begin the day. It feels completely ordinary. But what if the first hour of your morning is quietly influencing how alert, focused, and mentally energetic you feel for the rest of the day? Not because you need an expensive supplement. Not because you need a complicated brain training program. And certainly not because aging automatically means your memory has to decline. Some of the most useful habits are surprisingly simple. In fact, there are 5 morning habits I want you to know about today. And one of them is so easy that you could begin tomorrow morning without buying anything at all. I'm Dr. Calvin Stone. And when we talk about brain health after 60, I want you to think about something more important than simply remembering names or finding your keys. We're talking about staying independent, being able to follow a conversation, remembering why you walked into a room, making decisions with confidence, and waking up with the feeling that your mind is still working with you rather than against you. Now, here's where many people make a mistake. They assume that keeping the brain sharp requires doing something difficult. But your brain responds to ordinary signals throughout the day. Light, movement, hydration, mental stimulation, and the rhythm of your daily routine. Your morning gives you an opportunity to send some of those signals at exactly the time your body is beginning to transition from sleep into wakefulness. And the first habit is not about solving crossword puzzles. It starts with something much more basic. Get your body moving soon after you wake up. That doesn't mean you need to run around the neighborhood. For many adults over 60, especially those with joint or balance concerns, something as simple as getting out of bed, walking around the house, stretching gently, or taking a short morning walk can be a practical starting point. Why? Because your brain is not separate from the rest of your body. When you move, your cardiovascular system becomes more active, your muscles begin working, and your entire body starts transitioning into an alert state. Think of it like turning on the lights in a house. You don't need to flip every switch at once. You simply want to tell the system, the day has started. And there's another reason this matters after 60. As we get older, maintaining regular physical activity becomes increasingly important for overall health, including the health factors that support normal brain function. But here's the important part. You don't have to turn your morning into a workout session. A gentle walk while the coffee brews. A few minutes of safe mobility exercises. Walking outside to get the newspaper. Even moving around the house instead of remaining seated for the entire first hour. These small choices can help create a more active beginning to your day. Now, before you think, I've heard this before, stay with me. Because the second morning habit works on a completely different signal, and many older adults overlook it. It has nothing to do with exercise. It has to do with light. When morning arrives, your brain needs information about the environment around you. One of the most powerful signals is simply knowing that it is daytime. So instead of spending the first hour in a dim room with the curtains closed, try getting some natural morning light when practical. Open the curtains. Step onto a porch. Sit near a bright window. Or take your morning walk outside. Morning light helps regulate the body's internal clock, which is closely connected with your sleep-wake cycle. And that matters because a brain that is expected to function well during the day also needs a healthy rhythm between alertness and sleep. This is one of those habits that sounds almost too simple. But simple does not mean unimportant. And there is a fascinating connection here. If your mornings are bright and active while your evenings become calmer and darker, you're giving your body clearer environmental cues about when it should be awake and when it should begin preparing for rest. That brings us to something many people over 60 struggle with. Sleep. Because sometimes what feels like a memory problem during the day is made worse by simply not getting enough restorative sleep. So don't think of morning habits as isolated tricks. Think of them as pieces of one daily system. Movement tells your body to wake up. Morning light reinforces the timing of that wakefulness. And the next habit gives your brain something even more direct, a reason to think. Imagine waking up and spending the first 30 minutes scrolling through random posts on your phone. Your eyes are busy, but your brain may not be doing much intentional work. Instead, give your mind a small challenge. Read a few pages of a book. Write down what you need to accomplish that day. Recall yesterday's events. Do a simple puzzle. Practice a language. Or even have a meaningful conversation with someone. The goal isn't to prove how smart you are. The goal is to keep your brain actively engaged. And tomorrow morning, try this simple experiment. Before looking at your phone, spend 5 minutes deliberately remembering 3 things from the previous day. Where did you go? Who did you speak with? What was one thing you enjoyed? Don't worry if you can't remember everything immediately. The point is to practice retrieving information rather than simply consuming it. Because there's a major difference between passively receiving information and actively recalling it. And that difference is exactly where our next part becomes interesting. And that difference is exactly where our next habit becomes interesting. Habit number 3 is to give your brain a small memory challenge before you simply start consuming information. This is especially useful in a world where the first thing many of us do after waking up is reach for a screen. Think about what happens when you open your phone first thing in the morning. You don't have to remember anything. You simply scroll. One headline replaces another. One video replaces another. One notification leads to another. Your attention is being pulled from one thing to the next. Now, compare that with something completely different. You wake up, sit quietly for a few minutes, and ask yourself, what did I do yesterday afternoon? Who did I talk to? What was the last meal I prepared? What is one thing I need to accomplish today? You're asking your brain to retrieve information. And that is a fundamentally different mental activity. You're not trying to test yourself or prove that your memory is perfect. You're simply giving your brain an opportunity to practice remembering. For an older adult, this can be turned into a very simple morning ritual. Keep a small notebook beside your chair. Each morning, write down 3 things you remember for the previous day. Then write down 3 things you want to accomplish today. That's it. It might take less than 5 minutes. And if you occasionally struggle to remember one of the items, don't panic. Forgetting something occasionally is not automatically a sign of serious memory disorder. The important thing is to pay attention to patterns. If memory problems are becoming persistent, interfering with daily life, or noticeably worsening, that's when it becomes reasonable to discuss them with a healthcare professional. But your morning routine can still give your mind opportunities to stay engaged. And there's another benefit to this habit. When you write down what you want to accomplish, you're not just exercising memory. You're giving your attention a direction, because your brain has a limited amount of attention to distribute throughout the day. If you begin the morning reacting to every notification, headline, and message, your attention can become fragmented before you've even decided what matters. Instead, start by deciding, what deserves my attention today? That question alone can change the tone of a morning. Now, here's where many people make another mistake. They think brain health is only about the brain. But your brain is constantly affected by what is happening throughout your body. And that brings us to habit number 4. Don't ignore your morning hydration and nutrition. After several hours of sleep without drinking, you naturally wake up needing fluids. For most people, simply drinking water in the morning is a sensible way to begin replacing fluids. You don't need a special brain detox drink. You don't need an expensive powder. And you don't need to add a dozen ingredients to a glass of water. Plain water is perfectly reasonable. But there is an important distinction. Hydration is not a magic memory treatment. If you're experiencing ongoing confusion, significant dizziness, or other concerning symptoms, drinking water is not a substitute for medical evaluation. And if you have a medical condition that requires you to limit fluids, follow the advice given by your healthcare professional. For everyone else, the broader lesson is simple. Don't begin your day chronically underhydrated. And then comes breakfast. For some people, breakfast is simply coffee and something sweet. For others, it's nothing at all. There's no single breakfast that magically protects the brain. But your overall eating pattern matters. A morning meal that includes nutrient-dense foods, such as fruit, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, eggs, yogurt, or other protein-rich foods depending on your dietary needs, can be part of a balanced eating pattern. The key is not one miracle food. It's the pattern. Think about the difference between starting your morning with a meal that gives you protein, fiber, and a variety of nutrients versus relying heavily on highly processed foods with little nutritional value. Your brain is part of the body. It needs energy and nutrients just like the rest of you. And this is why I want you to avoid chasing individual superfoods. A blueberry is not going to cancel out an unhealthy diet. A handful of walnuts isn't a guarantee against memory loss. And no single breakfast can make you immune to cognitive decline. What matters much more is what you repeatedly do. Which brings us to the fifth morning habit. And this one may be the most overlooked because it doesn't look like a brain exercise at all. Talk to someone. Yes, a real conversation. Not just reading comments online. Not simply watching television. Not scrolling through social media. Actually communicating with another person. Call a friend. Talk with your spouse. Have coffee with a neighbor. Ask your grandchild a question. Speak with someone at the grocery store. Even a short, meaningful interaction can make your brain work in multiple ways. You're listening. You're processing words. You're remembering information. You're choosing what to say. You're interpreting another person's emotions. And you're responding in real time. That's a lot of mental activity hidden inside what appears to be an ordinary conversation. And for older adults, meaningful social connection can also be an important part of overall well-being. So imagine putting the 5 habits together. You wake up, you drink some water, you open the curtains and get some morning light. You move your body for a few minutes. You spend 5 minutes actively recalling something from yesterday and planning your day. You eat a balanced breakfast if that's part of your routine. And then you speak with someone you care about. Notice something? None of these habits requires you to become a different person. They simply change how you begin the day. And that may be the real lesson. Your brain doesn't need you to perform perfectly. It needs you to give it the right kinds of signals consistently. But there's one important piece we haven't talked about yet. Because you can do all 5 of these things in the morning and still undermine your brain health later in the day if you make one common mistake. And that mistake has nothing to do with food, exercise, or memory games. It's what you do with your sleep schedule. And that's where we need to look next. Because your brain doesn't suddenly decide at 8 p.m. that it wants to sleep. The process begins much earlier. Your body has an internal timing system that helps regulate when you feel awake and when you feel sleepy. And one of the strongest signals influencing that system is the rhythm of light and darkness you experience throughout the day. This is why the second habit we discussed, getting morning light, is more important than it may initially seem. Your morning is not just the beginning of your day. In a sense, it helps set the schedule for the hours that follow. If you wake up at different times every day, stay indoors in dim lighting for hours, spend much of the day sitting, and then expose yourself to bright screens late into the night, your body may receive mixed signals about when it should be alert and when it should wind down. And when sleep becomes inconsistent, you may notice something the next morning. You feel mentally slow. You reread the same sentence. You walk into a room and forget why. You struggle to concentrate during a conversation. Or you simply feel like your brain hasn't completely turned on. That doesn't necessarily mean something is seriously wrong with your memory. Sometimes the brain is simply tired. And this is an important distinction. A tired brain can feel like a forgetful brain. That's why protecting your sleep should be considered part of protecting your cognitive health. Now, there isn't one perfect bedtime that works for every person over 60. Your schedule, health, medications, responsibilities, and natural sleep pattern all matter. But consistency can be useful. Try to keep your wake-up time reasonably regular. Get some natural light during the morning. Stay physically active during the day. And as evening approaches, give your body fewer signals that it needs to remain fully alert. That could mean dimming the lights, reducing stimulating activities, and creating a predictable wind-down routine. And here's something I want you to remember. If you're waking repeatedly during the night, snoring heavily, gasping during sleep, or feeling unusually exhausted despite spending enough time in bed, don't simply assume. That's just what happens when you get older. Those symptoms can have different causes, and some deserve professional attention. A good morning routine cannot compensate for a persistent sleep problem that needs evaluation. Now, let's bring everything together. Because we've talked about 5 habits, but I don't want you to leave this video thinking you need to completely redesign your life tomorrow morning. That's exactly the opposite of what I want. Instead, choose one. Maybe tomorrow you open the curtains as soon as you get up. Maybe you take a 10-minute walk. Maybe you put your phone aside and spend 5 minutes recalling yesterday. Maybe you make your breakfast a little more balanced. Or maybe you call someone you haven't spoken with in a while. Start there. Then, once that habit feels natural, add another. Because consistency beats intensity. And this is especially true after 60. You don't need to punish your body. You don't need to compete with your younger self. You need routines that are realistic enough to repeat. Think about it this way. One morning of healthy behavior is just one morning. But hundreds of ordinary mornings, each containing small positive choices, can create a very different lifestyle. And that is where healthy aging becomes powerful. Not in one dramatic decision, in repetition. There's another reason I like this approach. These habits don't just belong to your brain. Movement supports your physical function. Morning light supports your daily rhythm. Mental recall keeps you actively engaged. Good hydration and nutritious food support your overall health. And social interaction connects your mind with the people around you. So we're not really talking about 5 isolated brain hacks. We're talking about 5 ways to build a morning that tells your entire body. It's time to wake up, move, think, connect, and participate. And there is something deeply encouraging about that. Because getting older does not mean you have to stop challenging your mind. It doesn't mean every forgotten name is a warning sign. And it certainly doesn't mean your best years of independence are automatically behind you. But it does mean that the habits you repeat deserve attention. So tomorrow morning, before you reach for your phone, pause. Take a breath. Open the curtains. Drink some water if appropriate for you. Move a little. Ask yourself what you remember from yesterday. Decide what matters today. And if you can, connect with another human being. 5 small choices. Nothing dramatic. But together, they can transform the way your morning begins. And sometimes, the most important change isn't discovering a secret you've never heard before. It's finally giving the simple things you already know the consistency they deserve. And sometimes, the most important change isn't discovering a secret you've never heard before. It's finally giving the simple things you already know the consistency they deserve. So before we finish, I want to leave you with a simple way to turn these 5 habits into an actual morning routine. Because information only becomes useful when you know what to do with it. Habit 1, move. You don't need an intense workout the moment your feet touch the floor. Start safely. Walk around your home. Stretch gently. Take a short walk outside if your balance and health allow it. The goal is to transition your body from stillness into movement. And if you use a cane, walker, or another support, use it. There is no prize for taking unnecessary risks. Your morning routine should make you feel more capable, not put you in danger of falling. Habit 2, get morning light. Open those curtains. Let daylight into the room. If practical, spend some time outdoors. Combine it with your morning walk, and you've already accomplished 2 habits at once. And remember, you don't have to stand outside staring directly at the sun. That's unnecessary and can harm your eyes. Simply being exposed to ordinary outdoor daylight is the goal. Habit 3, wake up your memory before you wake up your phone. This may be the easiest habit to overlook. Before scrolling through emails, social media, or news, give yourself a few minutes of intentional thinking. Ask yourself, what happened yesterday? What am I doing today? Who do I need to call? What is one thing I'm looking forward to? You can write the answers down, or simply think about them. The point is to begin the day as an active participant rather than immediately becoming a consumer of information. And here's a small challenge you could try tomorrow. Put your phone somewhere that isn't within immediate reach of your bed. When you wake up, don't make your first movement a swipe. Make your first movement something physical. Stand up, open the curtains, walk, drink some water, then decide when you actually want to check the phone. That tiny change can completely alter the first few minutes of your morning. Habit 4, give your body something useful. For many people, that means water and a balanced breakfast. Don't get trapped by internet claims about one special ingredient that supposedly activates your brain. Real nutrition is much less dramatic. A varied eating pattern that includes nutrient-dense foods is far more meaningful than chasing one miracle food. Depending on your needs and dietary preferences, that might include foods such as berries or other fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, yogurt, eggs, fish, beans, or other sources of protein. And if you have diabetes, kidney disease, heart failure, or another condition that affects your dietary or fluid needs, your healthcare professional's advice should take priority. Personalization matters. Habit 5, connect. This might be the one people dismiss most quickly. But ask yourself something. How often do you have a real conversation before noon? Not a text, not a comment, not a television program. A conversation. Maybe you call your sister. Maybe you sit with your spouse over breakfast. Maybe you meet a friend for coffee. Maybe you talk with a neighbor during your morning walk. Maybe you simply ask your grandchild how school is going. These moments are part of a healthy life too. And they remind us that brain health isn't just about protecting an organ inside your skull. It's about preserving your ability to participate in your own life, to remember, to communicate, to make decisions, to move, to laugh, to learn, to stay connected. That's the bigger picture. And there's one final point I don't want you to miss. Don't turn these habits into another source of stress. If you miss your morning walk one day, you haven't failed. If you forget to drink water until later, you haven't ruined your brain health. If you sleep poorly one night, that doesn't mean your memory is suddenly deteriorating. Health is built from patterns, not perfection. Look at what you do most days. That's where the real opportunity is. And if you notice a genuine change in your memory, thinking, behavior, or ability to manage everyday activities, don't try to diagnose yourself from a YouTube video. Talk with your doctor, especially if the change is persistent or interfering with normal life. Your brain deserves attention, not fear. And getting older deserves the same kind of respect. You are not trying to become 30 again. You're trying to make the years ahead as capable, independent, connected, and meaningful as possible. That is a much better goal. So tomorrow morning, before the world starts demanding your attention, give yourself a few quiet minutes. Move your body. Get some daylight. Wake up your memory. Nourish yourself. And connect with someone. 5 simple habits. One morning at a time. And sometimes, that is exactly where a healthier future begins. There's one final idea I want you to carry with you. Your brain does not need a perfect morning. It needs a supportive routine that you can actually repeat. After 60, the goal isn't to fight aging. The goal is to age with intention. To keep moving. To stay curious. To remain connected. To protect your independence for as long as possible. And that starts with the ordinary choices you make when nobody is watching. So let's make the 5 habits easy to remember. First, move your body. Even gentle movement can help you transition from sleep into an active day. Second, get some morning light. Open the curtains. Step outside when practical. Let your body recognize that the day has begun. Third, challenge your memory before you consume information. Recall yesterday. Plan today. Write something down. Give your mind a reason to retrieve, organize, and focus. Fourth, hydrate and nourish your body appropriately. Don't chase miracle drinks or miracle foods. Build a balanced eating pattern that fits your individual health needs. And fifth, connect with another person. A conversation can be more meaningful than another hour of passive scrolling. These habits may sound almost too ordinary, but that's exactly why I like them. You don't need to wait for the perfect Monday. You don't need a complicated program. And you don't need to transform your entire life overnight. Choose one habit. Practice it tomorrow. Then repeat it the day after that. Eventually, another habit becomes easier to add. And little by little, your morning begins to work for you rather than simply happening to you. One final reminder. If you or someone you love is experiencing persistent or worsening problems with memory, thinking, communication, or everyday functioning, don't assume it's simply normal aging. A YouTube video cannot tell you the cause. A healthcare professional can help evaluate what is actually happening. And if you take prescription medications, never stop or change them based on information from video. Discuss medication questions with your doctor or pharmacist. Your brain deserves care, but it also deserves patience. You don't have to remember everything. You don't have to be as fast as you were decades ago. And you certainly don't have to compare your mind with anyone else's. What matters is staying engaged with your own life. So tomorrow morning, before you reach for that phone, pause for a moment. Open the curtains. Take a few steps. Drink some water if appropriate for you. Ask yourself what happened yesterday. Think about what matters today. And speak with someone you care about. 5 habits. One morning, then another, and another. Because healthy aging isn't usually created by one dramatic decision. It's created by thousands of small decisions repeated over time. If you found one habit in this video that you're willing to try tomorrow morning, tell me in the comments. Which one will you start with? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? And if this video helped you understand your brain a little better, consider subscribing. Because in our next videos, we'll continue looking at practical habits that can help you protect your independence, strength, memory, and quality of life as you grow older. Remember, getting older doesn't mean giving up on your brain. It means giving your brain the care, stimulation, movement, rest, and connection it deserves. One morning at a time.